The Dominion had fallen. For centuries, they had terrorized the galaxy, conquering worlds, enslaving civilizations, and crushing any resistance with ruthless efficiency. The Galactic Federation, an alliance of the most advanced races, had fought against them for decades, pouring every resource into their war machine. Entire fleets had been sacrificed, worlds had burned, billions had died. But today, it was over. 1,000 Federation warships hovered over the smoldering remains of Korak Prime, the Dominion's last stronghold. The once mighty planet was now a graveyard of wreckage and fire, its defenses shattered, its rulers dead. On the Federation flagship Aurora, Admiral Velren stood tall, his blue-scaled face gleaming with victory. Across every communication channel, cheers erupted as news spread. The Dominion was no more. "The galaxy is free," Velren declared, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Their tyranny has ended. Today we celebrate." Across the fleet, lights flickered in celebration. Crews raised drinks, soldiers embraced, and across the galaxy, citizens rejoiced. And then, the alarms blared. The joyful chatter cut off instantly. Officers scrambled to their consoles. Holograms flickered to life, displaying an incoming fleet on the outer edge of the system. New contacts, a tactical officer barked. Unknown warships entering the battlefield. No transponder codes, no known signatures. Velren's stomach twisted. Had they missed something? Was this a Dominion backup fleet? Put them on screen. The main holographic display shifted, showing a massive fleet emerging from the darkness of space. Velren's throat went dry. They were colossal. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. Their hulls were unlike anything in the Federation database. Thick, armored slabs of reinforced metal, worn and scarred from untold battles. Unlike Federation ships, which were sleek and elegant, these vessels were built for war and nothing else. Their movements were slow, deliberate, and unshaken. Predators approaching wounded prey. A silence gripped the bridge. The Federation had just fought the greatest war in galactic history, but somehow, staring at this unknown fleet, they felt smaller than ever before. "Identify them," Velren ordered. The scanners worked. And then, an answer appeared. Velren stared at the screen, his breath catching in his throat. Terran. No, that couldn't be right. Humans. The minor, barely spacefaring species that the Federation had dismissed centuries ago. They had been denied membership due to their primitive technology. They had been insignificant, irrelevant. But now, they had arrived. Then, a single message came through. The voice was deep, steady, and undeniably human. "This is the Terran Dreadnought fleet. Stand down." And across the entire bridge of the Federation flagship, the realization set in. The war was over, but something far more terrifying had just begun. Admiral Velren's mind raced. The war was supposed to be over. The Federation had emerged victorious. The Dominion had fallen. But now, an unknown fleet had arrived. And they were claiming to be Terran. He turned toward his officers. "Confirm that transmission. Run it through every database." The communication officer's hands flew over the controls, analyzing the signal. After a few tense moments, his skin paled. "Sir, it's real. The language, the encoding, it's human." Murmurs filled the bridge. Humans. Here. Now. Velren narrowed his eyes. This didn't make sense. Humanity had been nothing more than a minor curiosity when the Federation last checked on them. They lacked the advanced technology necessary for deep space warfare, let alone the ability to field a fleet of this size. "Open a channel," Velren commanded. "We need answers." A few seconds passed. Then the view screen flickered to life. A figure appeared. He was human, but not the fragile, naive kind the Federation had dismissed centuries ago. His face was lined with experience, his short cropped hair gray at the temples. His uniform was a deep black, adorned with no rank insignia, because he didn't need one. The presence in his gaze said it all. This was a commander of war. Velren straightened. "This is Admiral Velren of the Galactic Federation. Identify yourself." The human nodded once. "Fleet Commander Elias Kane, Terran Dreadnought Fleet." His voice was even, completely unshaken. Velren's mind struggled to process the name. Terran, Dreadnought Fleet. Kane's expression didn't change. "Correct." The Admiral swallowed. "Humanity was denied Federation membership centuries ago. The last records we have of your kind indicate that you lacked the necessary technology to sustain interstellar travel. How did you?" "You left us behind," Kane interrupted, his voice calm, but carrying an undeniable weight. "You locked us out of your Federation, ignored us. We had to advance on our own." Velren frowned. "You're implying that humanity developed these ships alone, without access to Federation technology." Kane didn't answer. He didn't need to. Velren's stomach twisted. That was exactly what they had done. Before the Admiral could respond, a sensor officer gasped, "Sir, they're ships. We can't scan them." Velren turned sharply. "Explain." "We're reading mass and movement, but the internal systems, weapon signatures, power sources, it's all hidden. No energy spikes, no shield signatures. It's like their hulls are just absorbing everything." That was impossible. Federation warships ran on advanced energy shielding, reinforced plasma cannons, and quantum-based defense grids. These Terran ships looked primitive. Thick armor plating, massive hulls. But somehow, they were unreadable. Velren turned back to Kane. "Why are you here?" Kane studied him for a long moment before answering. "To restore balance." Velren felt the weight of those words settle over the bridge like a storm cloud. The Federation had spent centuries believing they were the greatest power in the galaxy. But if humanity had truly advanced beyond their understanding, then the galaxy had just changed forever. The bridge of the Aurora was deathly silent. Admiral Velren stared at the screen, trying to ignore the unease creeping into his chest. This was wrong. The Federation had fought for dominance in the galaxy for millennia. No species had ever risen this fast, certainly not one they had dismissed as primitive. And yet here humanity stood, commanding a fleet that dwarfed anything the Federation had ever seen. Velren set his jaw. He couldn't allow fear to control them. The Federation was still in charge. "Fleet-wide transmission," he ordered. The comms officer nodded, opening the channel. "This is Admiral Velren of the Galactic Federation," he declared, his voice steady. "You are in Federation space. Your presence here is unauthorized. Identify your purpose immediately." Seconds passed. Kane did not respond. Instead, the Terran dreadnoughts continued their slow, methodical advance. Velren's claws curled against his armrest. The Federation had just won the greatest war in galactic history. The Dominion had fallen before them. They would not be intimidated by an upstart species, no matter how large their ships were. He turned to his weapons officer. "Fire a warning shot. Closest dreadnought. Minimal power." The officer hesitated. "Sir, that might." "That's an order," Velren snapped. A moment later, a pulse of blue plasma surged from one of the Federation's destroyers, streaking across the void toward the nearest human vessel. It struck the dreadnought's hull dead center. And nothing happened. The plasma dispersed, vanishing as if it had been absorbed by the very metal itself. Not even a scratch remained on the surface. The bridge of the Aurora fell into stunned silence. "Impossible," an officer whispered. Velren's pulse quickened. Federation weapons were the most advanced in the galaxy. Their plasma cannons could melt through entire fleets. But that dreadnought, it hadn't even flinched. Then, without warning, one of the Terran ships fired back. It wasn't a plasma beam. It wasn't a missile. It was a simple, solid projectile. A chunk of metal the size of a small shuttle, moving at an unthinkable velocity. The bridge crew barely had time to react before it struck a Federation battleship. The ship vanished. No explosion, no energy surge, just obliteration. The projectile tore through the vessel, as if it were paper, punching straight through its core before continuing into deep space. The battleship, once a proud war machine, was now a drifting field of debris. Velren's blood ran cold. The Federation had perfected energy weapons, but humanity had done something far worse. They had mastered physics itself. The bridge trembled with shock. The Federation fleet had outnumbered the humans 50-1. But suddenly, those numbers didn't matter anymore. Velren swallowed hard and turned back to the view screen. Fleet Commander Kane's expression hadn't changed. His voice, when he spoke, was calm. That was a warning shot. And in that moment, Admiral Velren finally understood. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. Admiral Velren gripped the edge of his command chair, his mind racing. A single shot, just a chunk of metal, had erased a Federation battleship. No energy buildup, no shield penetration sequence, just raw, devastating physics. The bridge was silent, the crew paralyzed with shock. Federation warships didn't just disappear like that. Velren turned back to the screen, locking eyes with Fleet Commander Kane. The human still looked calm, almost bored. "This is insanity," Velren growled, forcing steel into his voice. "You just attacked a Federation vessel. You have declared war on us." Kane exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "No, Admiral. You fired first." Velren clenched his jaw. The entire fleet had just watched a Federation ship be turned into scrap. He couldn't afford to look weak. His second-in-command, a wiry officer named Yelth, leaned in close. "Sir," she whispered, her voice trembling, "if they can do that with a single shot, imagine what they could do to the rest of us." Velren already had, and he didn't like the answer. Taking a slow breath, he squared his shoulders. "I want a full tactical analysis of their ships," he ordered. "I refuse to believe that a species we left behind has surpassed us without weaknesses." The sensor officer gulped and quickly ran another scan. A few moments later, his face turned pale. "Sir, we can't analyze them. Their hulls are blocking every attempt to read their internal systems. We don't know their power sources, their shield frequencies. Nothing." Velren's claws dug into his armrest. The Federation relied on technological superiority, on knowing their enemies inside and out before engaging. But these humans, they were ghosts. Kane's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You want answers, Admiral." The human's expression hardened. "Fine. Here's one." The screen flickered, and suddenly, a map of the galaxy appeared. Velren's eyes narrowed. The Federation's core worlds were marked in blue, the Dominion's fallen territories in red. But then, new markings, dozens of them. No, hundreds. Planets, colonized planets, all belonging to humanity. Velren's breath caught. "This is impossible. The Federation has no records of human colonies beyond their home system." Kane smiled slightly. "Because we never told you." Velren stared in disbelief. For centuries, humans had been dismissed, ignored. The Federation had assumed they remained trapped on Earth, struggling to survive. But the truth was far worse. Without the Federation's guidance, humanity had expanded on its own. They had settled hidden worlds, developed new technologies, and built a military that could rival the strongest armadas in the galaxy. And now, they had returned. Kane leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet but firm. "You abandoned us." His gaze darkened. "You left us behind." Velren swallowed hard. The Federation had always believed itself to be the pinnacle of civilization, the rulers of the stars. But they had made a mistake. They had ignored Earth. And now, Earth had come back. Admiral Velren's hands tightened into fists. His mind screamed at him to deny what he was seeing. Hundreds of planets. Hundreds. Humanity had spread across the galaxy, beyond the reach of the Federation's watchful eye. While the Federation had been locked in war with the Dominion, humans had been expanding, building, and preparing. And the Federation had no idea. Velryn forced himself to focus. These colonies, how did you hide them? How did you expand this far without our knowledge? Fleet Commander Kane tilted his head, as if the question amused him. You assume we needed your knowledge. Velryn's jaw clenched. That's not an answer. Kane leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. Your Federation was too busy fighting the Dominion, too busy congratulating itself on its own power. You thought we needed your technology, your guidance. He shook his head. We didn't. Velryn exhaled sharply, his frustration mounting. No species advances this quickly without outside influence. You had no access to our data networks, no trade agreements, no technological assistance. He gestured to the colossal dreadnoughts looming outside the viewport. And yet you built these. Kane gave a slow nod. Yes. Velryn glared at him. How? The human's gaze darkened. Because we had no choice. Silence. For a moment, nothing but the hum of the Federation ship's systems filled the air. Velryn studied the human's face, searching for something. Anything. That made sense. No choice. He repeated. Kane's voice was quiet, but unshakable. You abandoned us. Velryn stiffened, but Kane continued. You denied us Federation membership. You left us on the edge of space with no allies, no resources, nothing. So we did what humans do best. His gaze met Velryn's, cold and certain. We survived. A chill ran down Velryn's spine. Kane stood up from his command seat. The simple motion sent an unspoken message. This conversation was over. I suggest you reconsider your stance. Admiral, Kane said. The Dominion War is over, but a new age is beginning. Velryn narrowed his eyes. A new age. Kane nodded. The Federation has ruled the galaxy for centuries. But now, you're not the only ones with power. His tone was calm, but the weight behind his words was anything but. For the first time, the galaxy has a choice. Velryn inhaled sharply. And if we refuse to acknowledge that choice, Kane's expression remained neutral. Then I suggest you prepare your forces better than you did for the Dominion. The transmission cut off. Velryn's screen went dark. And outside the viewport, the Terran fleet remained motionless, waiting for the Federation to make its next move. Admiral Velryn stared at the darkened screen, his pulse pounding in his ears. For centuries, the Galactic Federation had seen itself as the sole ruler of civilized space, the guiding hand that shaped the future of the galaxy. Every major species acknowledged their authority, some willingly, others because they had no choice. But humanity had just shattered that illusion. They had no grand introductions, no requests for diplomacy. No, they had arrived with a fleet larger than any in recorded history, technology the Federation couldn't even scan, and weapons that broke the fundamental rules of warfare. And they had come with a simple message. We exist. We are your equal. Acknowledge it, or don't. It changes nothing. The bridge of the Aurora remained silent. Every officer was still staring at the sensor readings, at the impossibly massive fleet holding its position outside Korak Prime. Finally, Velryn exhaled, his voice low and firm. Open a channel to the Federation Council. The comms officer hesitated. Sir, if we report this. Velryn's gaze snapped to him. Now. A few moments later, a holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the bridge. Seated around a long table in the distant capital world of Eldoria, the High Council of the Galactic Federation, the most powerful beings in the galaxy, appeared. Chancellor Orlan, a regal, silver-skinned elder of the Valithar, frowned at Velryn. Admiral, this is an unscheduled communication. I trust the war has been concluded. Velryn took a steadying breath. Yes, Chancellor. The Dominion has fallen. Applause erupted from the council members. Velryn didn't share their relief. He gritted his teeth. But there's a complication. Orlan's gaze sharpened. Explain. Velryn swallowed. A new fleet has entered the system. Unknown ships. Terran ships. The room fell silent. The council members exchanged puzzled glances. Orlan furrowed his brow. Terran, he scoffed. The primitive species. I fail to see why this concerns us. Velrin hesitated for only a moment before transmitting the sensor footage. The obliterated battleship, the failed plasma shot, the fleet of titanic dreadnoughts looming over the battlefield like silent gods. The effect was instantaneous. Council members paled. Some gasped. Others simply stared, their minds struggling to process the impossible reality in front of them. Orlan's voice was a whisper. That cannot be. Velren's voice was cold. It is. The Chancellor gripped the edges of the table, his expression darkening. What do they want? Velren hesitated. They claim they seek balance, that the Federation is no longer the sole power in the galaxy. His jaw clenched, and I believe they are prepared to prove it. Silence. Then, send the fleet. Velren blinked. Chancellor. Orlan's expression hardened. The Federation has stood unchallenged for millennia. We will not bow to a species we left behind. His voice turned cold. Send the Grand Armada. Show them their place. Velren felt his stomach twist. They don't understand. He had seen the truth. The Federation had spent centuries believing itself untouchable. But in the shadows, humanity had been waiting, preparing, advancing. And now, the Federation was walking straight into a war they didn't even understand. Outside, the Terran fleet remained unmoving, silent, watching, as if they already knew what was coming next. The Grand Armada of the Galactic Federation was the single most powerful force ever assembled. It had crushed the Dominion. It had enforced order across 1,000 systems. It was unstoppable. At least, that's what the Federation had always believed. Now, 10,000 warships burned through hyperspace, engines roaring as they hurtled toward Korek Prime. Admiral Velren stood on the bridge of the Aurora, watching the fleet's arrival on the tactical display. It was a terrifying sight. Planet crackers, dreadnoughts, carrier swarms, a force designed to break empires. And yet, a cold knot of dread had settled in his stomach. The humans had not moved. Their dreadnoughts remained still, hanging in the void like ancient sentinels. No repositioning, no tactical formations, just silence. Velren knew what that meant. They weren't afraid. On the central view screen, Chancellor Orlan's hologram flickered into view. His silver-skinned face was calm, but there was an unmistakable arrogance in his eyes. The Armada is in position, Orlan declared. Transmit a final warning. Velren exhaled slowly. There would be no reasoning with the Council now. The Federation's pride had already decided its fate. The comms officer nodded. Channel open. Sir. Velren steeled himself, then spoke. This is Admiral Velren of the Galactic Federation. You are in violation of sovereign space. Stand down immediately. The human fleet remained silent. No response. No motion. Orlan frowned. Increase transmission power. The comms officer did. Message sent. No reply. Orlan's patience thinned. They are ignoring us. Very well. He leaned forward. Open fire. Velren inhaled sharply. Chancellor. Now. The order was relayed instantly. A second later, the void ignited. Thousands of Federation warships unleashed a storm of plasma and energy beams, lighting up the darkness of space. The firepower was enough to scorch entire worlds, enough to obliterate fleets in an instant. It struck the human ships. And nothing happened. Velran's breath caught. The energy vanished on impact. No explosions, no visible shielding, no damage. It was as if the Terran dreadnoughts absorbed the fire like it was nothing more than a soft breeze. Murmurs filled the Aurora's bridge. Panic crept into the voices of officers. Direct hits. No effect. Orlan's expression twisted in confusion. Impossible. Increase power to maximum output. And then, the Terran fleet moved. For the first time, the Dreadnoughts came to life. Not all of them, just a single Terran battleship at the front of the formation. It turned, slowly, facing the center of the Federation armada. Velryn knew what was about to happen. A weapon powered up. Not plasma. Not energy. Not missiles. Just a solid projectile. It fired. The kinetic round traveled at unthinkable speeds, striking a Federation battleship. And the battleship ceased to exist. The round continued through, obliterating 3 more warships before vanishing into deep space. Silence fell over the fleet. Then, another Terran ship fired. Another battleship vanished. Then another. And another. Federation warships began to break. Panic spread. Captains shouted over comms, trying to retreat, trying to understand what was happening. Velryn's voice was quiet. "Chancellor, we are outmatched." Orlan stared at the destruction unfolding before him, horror creeping into his eyes. This isn't possible. Velryn turned toward the view screen, his heart pounding. The Federation had believed itself invincible, but humanity had prepared for this war long before it even began. And now, the illusion of power was crumbling. The Federation's Grand Armada, the most powerful fleet ever assembled, was breaking apart. The Terran Dreadnoughts were methodical, relentless, unstoppable. They didn't fire in desperation. They didn't panic. They simply destroyed. Another kinetic round ripped through 3 more warships, leaving nothing but debris. A Federation carrier tried to retreat, engines flaring to full power, only to be struck by a single projectile that pierced straight through its core. It detonated in a silent explosion, sending fire and wreckage spinning into the void. Admiral Velryn watched in stunned silence. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Across the bridge, officers shouted reports in panicked voices. "The fleet is collapsing. Our weapons are useless. The Terrans are advancing." Velryn forced himself to think, "We have to retreat." If they stayed, the entire Grand Armada would be erased from existence. He turned to the Chancellor's flickering hologram. "We need to withdraw. Now." Chancellor Orlan's face was ashen. His once arrogant expression had vanished, replaced by something Velryn had never seen before. Fear. We can't lose," Orlan whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "We are the Federation." Velryn clenched his fists. Pride had doomed them. A Terran battleship moved forward, positioning itself at the center of the human formation. Its weapons remained silent. A transmission came through. "Fleet Commander Kane is hailing us," the comms officer said, voice trembling. Velryn's chest tightened. He already knew what Kane was going to say. "Put him through." The screen flickered. Kane's face appeared, as calm as ever. Behind him, not a single human officer looked tense. They had never believed they were in danger. "This fight is over," Kane said simply. "Your ships are outmatched. Your weapons are useless. Your fleet is dying." He leaned forward. "But we are not here to exterminate you." Velryn's breath caught. Mercy. After all this. Kane's gaze darkened. "We are here to end the lie." Silence. Kane continued, his voice cold and deliberate. "For centuries, the Federation has ruled through superiority, through control. You called yourselves the pinnacle of civilization. You told yourselves you were the strongest, the most advanced, the rightful rulers of the stars." He tilted his head slightly. "But that was never true, was it?" Velryn felt the weight of those words settle over him. The Federation had believed its own myth. Kane exhaled. "Now the galaxy will know the truth." Velryn swallowed hard. "And what truth is that?" Kane's expression didn't change. That the Federation was never a galactic empire. His voice was quiet, but unshakable. It was just the first empire. Velryn's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a battle. It wasn't even a war. It was a transition. The Federation had ruled for centuries. Now, Humanity had come to take its place. Chancellor Orland shook his head, his voice weak. No, we surrender. Kane didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded. Noted. The transmission cut off. And the Terran dreadnoughts remained where they were. They had already won. Epilogue. The dawn of a new age. The news spread across the galaxy in days. Every species, every empire, every colony heard the same message. The Federation had fallen. Earth had returned, and the balance of power in the galaxy would never be the same again.